Just wanted to say a few words. I was sitting yesterday somewhere and someone comes over to me, a chassid, not a Chabad chassid, and he says to me, do you know who Manis Friedman is? And I said, yes. And he says, is he an Apikorus? I said, no. And he said, well, I have this book that's written in Hebrew, Lashon Kodesh, which accuses him of Apikorus heresy based on different statements that he said. So without going into a dialogue and a debate with him, I said, look, one of the individuals who attacked him publicly and continues to attack him, a so-called rabbi, is a noyev. According to the testimony given by a woman, and it's online, he's a womanizer, an adulterer, he has a concubine, whatever the case is. I'm not going to go into yes, no. The point is there is chatter about him, gossip about him, and she has on tape how he admitted to this affair and all that. And he's calling Rabbi Manis Friedman an Apikorus. I said, you go figure it out. I know Rabbi Manis Friedman for a long, long time. And he's a person who has a 14, 15 children, and he's faithful. So when this rabbi will be as faithful as Rabbi Manis Friedman, then we can begin talking. Now, I just say this because there is a concept called Chachamim Hizaru B'dvreichem. Scholars, Chachamim, Talmidei Chachamim, be careful with your words. There's no question that certain things that are said by people, sometimes in the heat of the moment, sometimes for sensationalism, for whatever the case, would fall into that category that it should be said different, it should be tweaked differently. So I can understand the objection to some of Rabbi Friedman's statements, but at the same time, if you're not knowledgeable of the field, Hasidic philosophy, that he's espousing, then you're really not a player in that ballpark. Meaning to say, it's not your field. You can know Talmud, you can know the halacha, Jewish law, and be a great scholar in those things. But if you're not seasoned and an expert in Hasidic philosophy, then to give an opinion about a concept whether God needs us or God doesn't need us and things like that is silly. It's not your field. At the same time, I'm not going to go say that everyone agrees with Rabbi Friedman's view of that issue within Chabad itself, but nevertheless, again, he has an opinion and he's entitled to his opinion. Maybe he's talking about a certain level on God and not another level. Should he give a disclaimer? Should he give, introductions to before he says these inflammatory remarks and statements that are considered by some inflammatory? Yes, but that's between him and his creator, him and his Rebbe, not for me or any other rabbi or any other person to judge. There's no question that sensitivity and guidance for every one of us, we're not beyond the law. There's a rule in halacha, mehechen dantuni, show me your sources. I remember my father had an issue with where to marry one of my siblings and all that. There was a dispute, a disagreement, and he went to Rabbi Malo over Shalom. Rabbi Malo gave him a whole list of references. Said, I could show you here that the law is so-and-so, and basically you're wrong, and that's it, So you have a right to ask, mehechen dantuni. I also want to address a wonderful Farbrengen that Rabbi Jacobson, YY Jacobson, made. Was another very fine person, a teacher, someone who's really helped thousands of people. And notwithstanding that, the title sometimes to a clip, again, I don't know if it's him or his people who prepare his stuff for him, God is torturous, letting go of torturous Judaism. And that's not so bad, but if you hear inside towards the end, where he talks about his own life and he's being vulnerable, he calls God kind of a monster and torturous, and things there too need to be tweaked in the right way and be very careful because there are people listening all kinds of people who take it the wrong way, especially the youth. And that's what I'm most concerned about, is the youth. And I would say within Chabad, because the youth respects him and looks up to him as a guidance counselor, as a mashpia, as a teacher. God is not a monster, and God is not torturous. I'm the monster. I'm torturous. If I have demons inside myself, and Rabbi Jacobson speaks about his own demons and issues, that's his issues, Even that I frankly challenge. I knew him as a young boy. I observed him. And I don't believe when he was 15, 16, 17 years old, he had demons inside. I think he was a healthy boy who was very bright, and he was became a chayzer of the Rebbe. And, I think it was only later, maybe in his 20s, when he went through a crisis with the Rebbe's passing on Gimmel Tammuz, him and his friends, a group of them which I know, and I sat with and observed and heard, where there was a fallout in a sense. And that's another issue, and it's not now here the place to discuss it. But be that as it may, okay? Be that as it may, every person has a right to be vulnerable and to let his vulnerability out. I don't believe it's the Chabad way. In 2002, I believe it was, when they had the call of the shofar issue, right? So the rabbis, the rabbanim, the main objective was, besides whether it's questioned whether it's idolatry or not idolatry, whether it's connected to idolatry or not, is you don't air your dirty laundry in the public. You have an issue with your father, you talk about it privately. Okay? Never before in Jewish history have we seen such an approach where everything's out in the public. The internet has made that possible. And that's the flip side, the good side and the bad side. There's so much value to the internet and everything that comes from it. I can tell you from my own writing, I would have not written so much without the internet. But at the same time, there is this kind of have to be open. And we fall into a trap where you have to be vulnerable. And you have to let everyone know you're vulnerable. And that itself is a platform for making myself greater. Because if I'm vulnerable, then others that are in that situation or think they're in that situation will identify with it. There's a lot to talk about, but this isn't a counseling session. All I could say is that Rabbi Jacobson's main point, if you listen to his 7-hour Farbrengen, was just the opposite, to say how God is loving. But unfortunately, the sensationalism in the title, letting go of torturous Judaism and calling God a monster and calling God, torturous, and that I was tortured, and worse, calling it, using other things that he says over there, is very unhealthy for anyone. I believe it's healthy for himself, unhealthy for himself, but that's his decision, how he wants to go about his life and deal with these issues. And I'm not here to talk about him per se. I'm talking about here the youth. That the youth, if you want to grab on to something that's authentic, grab on to Hashem being loving and kind. And I know Jacobson says that. At the end says, but now I know that God is all loving. Well, you knew that when you were 15. I knew it when I was 15. All of us growing up knew it. There are cases when there's abuse and there's other issues and trauma and all of that. That's an exception to a rule. But generally speaking, we grew up healthy. We are healthy. We are normal. And God isn't torturous. And God isn't a monster. And God isn't Hitler, Yamach Shemoy, Chas v'Sholom. I mean, these are things that were said, and it's very disturbing. So, I'm not making a protest, but I feel compelled to let the public know that these type of slogans and sayings and word usage is a scheme of deceiving people, allowing people to those few people, and I saw those people sitting around the Farbrengen, and I know the element. I've walked the walk and talked the talk. I know who was there and what was there. And these are broken people with issues. And, giving them support is important. But at the same time, misleading an entire, Jewish world of thousands of people listening is problematic. It shouldn't be done. Be careful of what you say. And am I perfect? Far from it. I've made mistakes. Okay? So I'm calling for not an apology. I'm calling for a revamping of this this all of a sudden just say what you want and how you want it. We need to hizaru b'divrei chacham hizaru b'divreichem. And do you ask a Rav how whether you're allowed to say that? We are guided by Torah. Before we say something, before we push a certain point, and if we know it's controversial or sensitive, we should discuss it with a Rav, a mashpia, a real Yerushalayim. And if they say okay, fine. If they say no, then you zip your mouth and you don't say that, or you say it differently. So I'm encouraging you to listen to a Gimmel Tammuz Farbrengen with Rabbi Jacobson. It's wonderful. At the same time, to not walk away with God being a monster or torturous, or Torah being torturous. Torah is not torturous. Hashem is not torturous. It's you, the person that has your issues, and they can be dealt with and deal with in a private way. What's this business bringing it out to the public? That's my story. Take it or leave it. I'm friends with both Rabbi Jacobson and Rabbi Friedman and many others. But I am in the community. I live in Borough Park, not in Crown Heights. And I see people, I hear people stop me. And you need to listen. You need to hear what people say. May Hashem help that we come to a better understanding, and we find ways in counseling and helping people without, blaming the Torah and blaming God and blaming, and saying I'm bad. Self-deprecation is also forbidden. Chafetz Chaim, the famous story, Chafetz Chaim says, he went into a taxi and someone said, he asked him who he was. He didn't tell him. He starts speaking negative about himself. I'm a lowlife, I'm nothing, I'm this, I'm bad. And Chafetz Chaim said, speaking Lashon Hara against yourself is also wrong. Self-deprecation. I think that today we've come where we let everything out about our parents, siblings, friends, most rebbes, rabbis, and we just give it out in the public. And to blow the top off, that's self-deprecation. Even if you're talking about yourself, it involves another person, your father, your mother, your rebbe, your teacher. Now, there are times when halacha and supports it, if it's public, if it's abuse, okay? I'm not talking about those exceptions. But I feel that there's become this strand in today's frum circles where, you just say it the way it is, and because by being vulnerable, others will come along. Well, that's a big mistake, because maybe a few others will come along, or many others will go the other way. So be careful how to say it and what to say. And Farbrengen is a time to open up. So I understand Rabbi Jacobson opening up at a Farbrengen, especially after a little L'chaim. I relate to it. I understand that very well. But there are other ways, of opening up. Chassidim sat and Farbrengen and took a little mashkim, and they cried, and but no one did public confessions. Vidui, confession is for Yom Kippur under your talus, You know what I'm saying? It's like, we're going to make public confessions. I did this and I did that, and I put on film. I didn't put on film when I was 25 years old, and therefore, but now I'm about tshuva, and now I'm this famous rabbi, this famous teacher. Who needs to know about your personal life on that level? Come on, keep it to yourself. You're doing personal counseling, and if you think it's valuable for that particular person, that's a different story. And even that, I believe most psychologists and social workers says you should separate your own personal life from the client. So here we have clients, okay, out of Farbrengen. Yeah, you have a lot of clients. You have to know what to say, what not to say. Enough said. All the best. Hatzlacha. And I'm sure we will be getting nice comments, and lots of comments and critical comments, and it's all good. That's fine, That's fine. I'm here to bring us together, not to separate us, to bring all of us together, from the frum of the frum to those that are not yet frum, to the frum, or those that are angry. We can work it out. The Eibishter gives life, there's opportunity for growth, and we will work it out. Have a great day. Hatzlacha Rabba.